Hello everyone, it's Rachel and welcome back to Book and Bloom. Today I have a fall video. Woohoo! Trying to rep the fall vibes. I stole some of my mom's pillows for this video. Don't worry, I'm giving them back. I didn't actually steal them. But yeah, so today I'm going to be sharing some of my favorite fall reads, as well as specifically the books that I'm going to be reading this fall, so my TBR. I did a video like this for summer and I started it off with like kind of a, what is the definition of a fall read? So I'm going to be sharing my personal definition of a fall read, or the types of books that I think really encompass the fall vibe. So to me, fall is a time to be cozy, it's a time to be introspective, sometimes it's a time to have a little bit of fun, maybe have some thrillers, maybe have some spooky books, of course for Halloween, but it's also like a time of family because you have Thanksgiving. It's a time of reflecting on your childhood. The days are shorter, so you want to come in and you want to be cozy and put on a candle and watch a movie or something. Like those little moments, I feel like you're able to be a little bit more introspective. I also think about that in like change, because the leaves are changing. Those are kind of the themes that I feel like really encompass a fall read. If it's in a book, it makes me think of fall. It's not necessarily always that the book is set during the fall season. If it has these elements, it feels like a fall read. So yeah, that's my definition of a fall read, and these books that I'm going to be sharing with you guys today kind of fit into that category. I have some spooky books, I have some fantasy books, some cozy books, just some books that I feel like are just perfect to read in fall. I'm also going to be sharing the books that I'm reading myself. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to all of them, but they're books that I'm aiming to read this fall. So we'll see if I get through all of them. Let's get into the video, let's get into the recommendations. So the first book I wanted to start off with is Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This book is got the fantasy, it's got a little bit of a spookiness to it. You know, it's set in the world of like Alice in Wonderland. This is the origin story of the Queen of Hearts. So this is a tragic love story, and I just absolutely love this book. I'm a sucker for Marissa Meyer. You guys probably know this by now because I say it practically in every video. It's got some dark elements, it's really cute, it's got some cozy elements because she loves to bake, and look how beautiful this book is. Like, look how beautiful the cover is. I love it so much, it's so good. So this book is about this girl named Catherine. She just wants to open up a bakery with her best friend, but of course the sad reality is that she has very ambitious parents that want her to marry the king and to woo him to be the future queen of Hearts, where they live. Because they're in Wonderland, of course, there's lots of fantastical elements, some very fun characters, and lots of cute side stories. There's like this really horrible thing that's going on. There's this beast that keeps showing up and wreaking havoc. They don't understand where it came from, you know, what it is. Yeah, so that's kind of one of the things that's going on, some of the drama that's going on. There's a lot to the story. There's a lot of like, it has lots of things going on that makes the story feel very exciting. One thing that's really cool about this book is that it has been adapted into a play. Somebody made this into a musical and you can actually watch it on YouTube. I did that, and the music is actually really good and the acting is really cute. What they achieved with what they had, I think, was really impressive, and really, like, the music was good. Like, it's really cute. So I'd also highly recommend watching the play if you can, or listening to the soundtrack. I love it so much. So moving on, leaning into a little bit more of the spooky, The Lost Causes of Bleak Creek by Rhett McLaughlin and Link Neal. If you are unfamiliar with those names, Rhett and Link, they are actually internet-tainers, I think is what they call it. They're YouTubers. They have a morning show on YouTube where they do lots of crazy things. And I've been a long time lover of GMM, Good Mythical Morning. I found out they came out with a book. I had to read it. This book is really good, really fun. It kind of feels like a Stranger Things vibe, but it's set in the 90s. It's got more comedy to it. I mean, of course it's gonna have comedy, but yeah, so it's set in North Carolina, set in 92. There's a reformatory school, and it's just very creepy, some of the things that is going on with the school. There's just lots of weird things that are starting to happen now that this school is a part of this town. The main characters, Rex and Leaf, their best friend, I think that's what happened, is he got in trouble, and so then he had to go to this reformatory school, and so there's just lots of weird things going on, and so these kids end up trying to investigate, you know, what's going on at the school. Just lots of crazy things start happening, and I remember it being a lot of fun. I think that this is a fun Halloween read if you want something kind of spooky, something that kind of reminds you of Stranger Things. This book is the book for you. Okay, so next up, another thriller. This will be probably the last thriller. Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. The main character is Maggie, and her father wrote a lot about this house, their experience at this house. Because she was a child when they lived there, she doesn't know what's real, if there was some truth to what her father wrote in his book, and so now she's coming back to the house. Yeah, that's one thing that's cool about this book, is that it has Maggie's perspective, and then it has The House of Horrors, which is supposed to be the book that her father wrote. It alternates between reality and like the book. But yeah, it's like a mystery, it's a thriller, you know, it's kind of got a haunted house. You don't really know what's going on. Of course, Maggie's confused because, you know, she doesn't want to believe anything that her father wrote in his book. It just seems so ridiculous, so far-fetched. But now that she's revisiting this house, she's beginning to see there's a lot of weird things going on in this house. Of like plot twists, I feel like this wasn't like the craziest book I've ever read. I've heard that his plot twist can be really good and really crazy. Not quite on the Agatha Christie level of your brain exploding from the plot twist, but it's a fun book. I feel like it was an easy read, compelling story. The mystery is really interesting. It's got the right amount of spookiness to it. The plot twist was, you know, surprising and interesting. Definitely good Halloween spooky read if you are in the mood for something like that. I feel like the epitome of like a fall read when it comes to classics at least is Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. If you're not a classic reader, if classics intimidate you, not as easy to read because the way that they're written back then is very different, I think this is a great book. It's so atmospheric, it's so interesting, it's got wonderful characters, such an interesting storyline. There's lots of mystery, there's lots of spooky, creepy, what's going on, and just lots of really interesting themes to the story. You just have to read this. Like, I just feel like you just do. You should try to challenge yourself and read a classic. I know that classics are intimidating and they're hard to pick up sometimes, but I think people have bad experiences with classics because you felt pressured to read them in school, and then there's also the stress of having to intake it and understand what's going on and basically be able to be quizzed on it or write an essay on it or whatever. But like, try your best to just kind of reframe your experience and remind yourself that you can take your time, you can look up resources to help you understand what's going on if you need to. I encourage you guys and I challenge you guys to pick up a classic. Okay, so what is Jane Eyre about? Jane Eyre, you're following the character Jane Eyre and her life. It's kind of one of those like sad books. It's very sad, but then the ending is so happy and sweet and beautiful. I feel like it's cozy, it is dark, it is creepy. There's lots of things going on and you don't understand, you know, what is reality, what is it just, you know, her imagination. like what's going on. It's the perfect fall read. Maybe it's to encourage you. This book is sad, but it does have a happy ending. Unlike Heartless, Heartless does not have a happy ending. I feel like that's not really spoilery, because in the middle of this you might get to the point where you're like, okay, am I gonna read this whole book and I'm just gonna be depressed at the end of it? Like, no. As a way to encourage you to read this book, the ending is so good, so beautiful, and it is well worth the whole experience. I feel like there's lots of elements that people can really relate to with Jane Eyre. She's an ordinary girl who's just had a very hard life, and she ends up finding happiness in the end, which is really beautiful. I challenge you. If not this book, then I challenge you in general just to pick up a classic. I know it can be hard sometimes to pick up those older books, but I think it just really helps, broadens your horizons, and it really challenges you when you're reading. I think that can be good. Well, I don't think, I know I know it's good for us to challenge yourself a little bit sometimes. Think outside the box, read outside the box, and read something that's a little bit challenging or out of your comfort zone. Next, I'm going to be talking about books that I do not have on hand. I have borrowed from friends or borrowed from the library that I would highly recommend. I will include some books that I didn't absolutely love, but I'm going to still include this in the video because I understand that everyone's taste is different. So I might have not absolutely loved this book, but there's a chance that you might love it if it has some of the things that you are drawn to in a story. So next up is The Hazelwood. This book has such an interesting concept. It's basically about this girl who, her grandmother is like this famous author and is known to write this very haunting, creepy book about like fairy tales. So many people are like obsessed with it or just know all about it. Her and her mother have had just a very hard life, and her mom has kind of separated herself from her grandmother. She didn't want to be a part of her life. She's always been confused about why that was, why she didn't want her to read the book, why she didn't want for her grandmother to be a part of her life. Interesting things are starting to happen. Really weird things, unexplained things are starting to happen. And basically from what she can tell, she doesn't understand what's going on, but it seems like some of these characters from the fairy tale book, from this book that her grandmother wrote, are real, are coming to the real world. This other guy joins in with her like investigation, and she's trying to find her grandmother. She's trying to figure out what is going on. Is the Hazelwood real? Like, is this a real place? This is definitely a creepy book. I mean, think like Grimm Brothers fairy tale. I mean, most of them were just, it's funny because Disney's taken a lot of those original fairy tales and like made them family friendly because they were very grim, they were very dark, they were very messed up, and that's kind of the same vibe as these Hazelwood fairy tales. A lot of them are very dark, very creepy, very haunting. There's adventure, there's mystery, there's of course that fantastical fairy tale element to this book. So interesting, so crazy. I think the big thing that got me was the ending. The ending, that I think is the main issue that I had with the story, was the ending. You might like the ending, who knows? I'm not gonna spoil it, of course, but that I think was just the one thing. I don't know, it's like I expected an ending like that, but I didn't want it still. It's like I still didn't want an ending like that. And so I think overall, like, I think this is a really good book. I think it's just not quite my cup of tea. Like, maybe you gotta adjust it a little bit. Maybe it's got a little too much sugar. Maybe it's got not enough cream. I don't know. Maybe it's just the tea itself. Like, I don't know. I think I like the tea. I think it's maybe like an English breakfast or something. I'm just kidding. But yeah, I think it's a good book. I really love the idea. I think the idea of the book is really compelling. The story is really compelling. I think there's just some little things that I just didn't absolutely love, but I still would recommend picking it up because I feel like it's a very good like fall read, and who knows, maybe you will absolutely love this book, and you know, that's why I still wanted to include it. So next up we have a murder mystery. If you guys are familiar with the Truly Devious series, if you have not read that one, who knows, maybe that would be a good series to read this fall. I'm going to stick to just recommending standalone books from that same sort of storyline. There's this standalone book that it has the same characters, but I feel like you can still read it even if you haven't read the series. You might have a deeper understanding of the characters or of subtle things they might reference, but you're not going to be confused because it's in a different location, it's a different mystery, it's a different scenario, it's after like the events of those books. So I feel like you could still pick up this book even if you haven't read that series. It's The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson. So this is about Stevie, the main character, working at a camp, basically hired to investigate. There was a murder that happened a long time ago. They still don't really have like good closure about what happened and who did it. Of course, Stevie, she's got to open things up, she's got to investigate it. There's people in this town that don't want her to prod around and to investigate what happened because of course there's some shady stuff going on. I ended up liking this one, I think, a little bit more than the series. I really loved the mystery in the series. She did a lot of really cool things in the series, but I love the characters more in this book because they're not as obnoxious. I'm sorry, I don't know, maybe this is a hot take, I don't know, but I don't really like her relationship in the series. I think it's annoying. I was so over all the teen drama. I just wanted the mystery. I don't remember if this book is set in the summer or set during fall. I know that camp and camping and stuff like that is typically something you do in the summer, but something about, I guess it's just being in nature in general, just makes me think of fall. That is why I chose this book. A fun read for sure, and definitely let me know like if you guys have, you know, if you're familiar with this series, if you disagree with me in any way about if you think that you could read this as a standalone book. I read the series and I didn't remember a lot of the little details from this series, and I was able to pick this book up. Next up, I want to talk about a book that I think is a little bit more on the introspective, moody side of fall that I mentioned earlier. The book I want to talk about is Wild Blue Wonder. This book is like a fragmented timeline. Part of the book is set in the summer and part of the book is set in the winter. Happiness, all of the good days basically, and then you're seeing this other side, the present day, where things are very broken. There's so much is different, and you're trying to kind of piece together what caused this change. Why is everything so bleak? Again, of course this book isn't set during fall, but I feel like it feels like a kind of a fall read to me because nature is a big element to it. There's kind of this interesting mystery, but potentially fantasy element to it. The characters are really good. There's a lot of kind of introspective themes of like, you know, trying to deal with difficult things and trying to understand, you know, how to grow and overcome difficulties and kind of maybe face those things that maybe you're not proud of, maybe you're ashamed of, or maybe you feel guilty for in some way, even if maybe you weren't directly the one to blame. Kind of has some heavier topics, but it feels a very like cozy book. Something happened that made this family kind of broken and made the main character especially very closed off and broken and changed her a lot. They live, like their family lives on this like campsite. They have this camp and you know, every summer it was just this wonderful experience, having these people come to stay at their camp and having all these fun events and everything like that. So there's lots of fun, warm elements when you're in those scenes, lots of happiness. On the flip side, you have this serious, somber side and trying to kind of understand the mystery of what happened. So there's a new boy in town. Okay, so I'm just gonna read the description to you guys. There are two monsters in this story. One of them is me. Ask anyone in Winship, Maine, and they'll tell you the summer camp Quinn's family owns is a magical place. Paper wishes hang from the ceiling. Blueberries grow in the dead of winter. According to local legend, a sea monster even lurks off the coast. Mostly, there's just a feeling that something extraordinary could happen there, like Quinn falling in love with her best friend, Dylan. After the accident, the magic drained from Quinn's life. Now Dylan is gone, the camp is a lonely place, and Quinn knows it's her fault. But the new boy in town, Alexander, doesn't see her as the monster she believes herself to be. As Quinn lets herself open up again, she begins to understand the truth about love, loss, and monsters, real and imagined. Oh, this book was so good. It was so good. It's just a very beautiful book, and some of the topics that it talks about, of course, like it said, loss, and maybe, you know, I feel like forgiving yourself, allowing yourself to open up again, to allow yourself to heal from loss and heal from the things that maybe you're not proud of. Highly recommend this book. I absolutely love it. You will probably cry. It's, you know, good cry. A good cry. It's good to cry sometimes and to feel for others. So next up is a very cute book. This is a graphic novel. It is called Lightfall. And I believe that this is like going to be a series. I actually haven't read, they came out with a second one, which I haven't read yet, but I really want to. And it's just this adorable, like I was just instantly drawn to the art style. It has a really compelling story and has a little bit of spookiness to it. From what I remember, it's about this girl who goes on an adventure and she ends up meeting up with this frog-like character. He ends up joining her and they go on an adventure together. It's got some great fantasy to it, some magic. I don't know, part of me feels like going into too much detail will kind of like ruin it. Like just pick it up because it's cute, like it's not a long read. Just the whole feel of it, I feel like the colors and everything, I mean that fun fantasy element, there's a little bit of creepiness, a little bit of, you know, some mystery about what's going on, and I just feel like a lot of the elements in the story just feels very cozy fall. I just love the characters, absolutely adorable. Yeah, definitely pick this up if you want something that's cute and wholesome and just beautiful illustrations, cute characters, and a cute and compelling story. And it's quite, you know, it's got some depth to it, and if you know of any younger readers, then this would be a great book. You guys could read it together. I don't know, maybe you have some nieces or nephews or cousins, some younger siblings. This is, you know, a great book to recommend to them, and maybe even read it along with them. Next of the recommendations, I feel like you can't have Halloween without Poe. This in particular is The Fall of the House of Usher and Other Tales by Edgar Allan Poe, but if you've never read an Edgar Allan Poe short story or poem or any of his writing, you need to change that very soon, because his books are so creepy, so weird, so interesting, so perfect for Halloween. The Fall of the House of Usher is one of his longer short stories, but there's also The Black Cat, The Purloined Letter, the Telltale Heart, The Cast of Amontillado. I love that one personally. Just because there's just so much. Wrote an essay on The Cast of Amontillado, and his stories just have so much depth to them. They're not just creepy stories, you know. I feel like it's easy to write something creepy that doesn't have a lot of depth to it, and I feel like that's the problem with a lot of scary movies, is that they try to like make it you know, the story more complex or interesting or whatever. And sometimes it just makes it feel less creepy, and sometimes it makes it feel just, I don't know, silly, you know, like it doesn't work. He's just the king of just creepy stories. His writing is just, it's just so interesting, so eerie. I just think they're very fun. If you want something that just kind of gets you into that spooky Halloween spirit, something kind of thrilling and dark and creepy and mysterious, then Edgar Allan Poe is perfect for you. If you haven't read at least one of Poe's works, you need to change that. If anything, just read The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. That's maybe his most famous or just most quoted poem. So the last recommendation that I have is Wildwood Dancing. This is a book that one of my friends let me borrow. It's one of her favorite books, and this is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses. You know, got a dark, creepy side to it. The only thing I didn't like about this book was just one character. The main character I really liked, and the main story I really liked. So if you're unfamiliar with the story of the 12 Dancing Princesses, some girls that basically have access to this other world where they can dance. In the Barbie movie, that's all they did, just dance, right? So every full moon they can pass through to an enchanted world of the other kingdom. There they dance through the night with the fae creatures of this magical realm. Their father falls ill, and then their bad cousin comes and starts kind of taking over. The main character, Jenna, she suspects that her cousin has darker motives and basically wants to take over. Her obnoxious sister falls in love with somebody from the other kingdom, and there's lots of drama with that, kind of this forbidden love. There's a lot going on. It's a lot of fun though. I don't know what just happened with the camera, but yeah, it was a fun book. I really enjoyed the main character and the storyline, but overall I really enjoyed the story, and I feel like the fantasy, there's kind of a creepy element. It feels very perfect for fall. So if some of those story elements intrigued you, then you should definitely pick up this book. So yeah, those are my recommendations for fall.